The title of the session is How to Build a Hyper-Growth Machine. I don't think the title or the session needs much more of an introduction, but let me introduce the speaker to you who will talk about it. His name is Valentin Scholz, and he's actually used to live in Vienna. He's from Vienna, and he was an integral part of the Austrian startup ecosystem of the community before. For example, he was working with a startup called ChatGrape. Maybe the locals around you know it. At some point, he moved to London, where he joined Seedrs, which is the largest equity crowdfunding platform in the world, in Europe, where businesses raised more than $500 million through Seedrs, and he was responsible to lead the growth there. From there, he joined a company called Revolut. Who knows Revolut? Raise your hand, please. About 50, 60% room, more or less. So for those of you who don't know Revolut, I would say it's a challenger bank. Of course, Valentin will disagree with that backstage. But they raised, in the last funding round, $250 million for a valuation of $1.7 billion while being based in London and Europe. They managed to attract almost 2 million users in less than 3 years, making them probably and for sure the fastest growing startup in Europe. And guess what? Valentin is leading the growth there. So Valentin, before you come on stage, you know, you're from Vienna. We miss you. You moved to London. We picked the next song just to make sure to remind you that it's actually fun in Austria and they're always welcome back. So please welcome on stage with warm applause, Valentin Scholz.
Hi. So who of you has a Revolut? That's not too much yet. So I give you a bit of an overview about Revolut, what we're doing, and then move into growth, which is probably more interesting for all of you, because I guess most of you are startup founders or marketeers, growth people, and so on. And in the end, like if you have a startup, it's about growth and making money. All right, so we started Revolut around 2.5 years ago with a punchy mission to disrupt finance. Since then, we raised over 300 million. We are close to having 400 employees now. And that's basically our growth story. So basically, we started very small. We had a very small team, and we didn't have much money. We got into seed camp, got a bit of funding, and basically had to hustle hard to get our first initial traction. So what we started with was a debit card, that allowed you to spend fee-free anywhere in the world. We offered the interbank exchange rate, which was usually reserved for big banks like Goldman, Morgan Stanley, and so on. Since then, we nearly hit 2 million users, and we're currently doubling our user numbers every 6 months. So we just hit 1 million in, I think, December. Now we're at 2 million, basically, and at the end of the year, we reach 4 million. Our target is 100 million users in 5 years. So the way we see it, we just started. We currently have 250,000 active users on a daily basis and 850,000 monthly active users. And our transaction volume last month was roughly $1.7 billion and also growing very fast. What's even more impressive is that we broke even in December, which is a very rare thing, especially for young companies. So the way we structure Revolut, it's very cost efficient. We don't pay for Slack, we don't pay for engagement system, we don't pay for marketing tools. We build everything in-house, and we always think about like how much we spend. So far, we haven't spent anything on paid marketing, and our whole growth is organic. And how do we actually do this? So the key thing is actually not thinking about the solution. So the solution is basically the last 20%. So the way we start is basically we need to identify big opportunities. That could be like in an industry that hasn't been disrupted. That could be an industry that already saw a disruptor. To give you an example is international money transfers. I get a bit more in detail in the next slide. But it's something that it was very expensive for years. It was very slow. So to give you some sense of feeling, it usually takes 2 to 5 days to do an international money transfer from Europe to the US. And the thing is, like, there's similar industries or similar opportunities all the time out there. Just to name a few, for example, there's no global medical ID. So I just moved to London like a while ago, and they basically don't have any health records of me. I'm just like a blind spot there. It's even worse if you go to Bali and have like a really bad disease, or if you go, let's say, to Uganda and get really sick. The same with mass transportation. London is, like, there's so many people living in London that they can't really afford to have not a line working. So whenever there's snow or a train doesn't work anymore, it basically blocks the entire public transport. And it's so bad that it basically means you can stay at home and work from there because there's no point of actually getting to work. Second thing is, like, if you identified your problem, let's say it's international money transfers, you need to be the expert in that field. You need to be better than people that have 10 years of experience. So what we focus on in the beginning is really understanding the market, understanding our competitors, understanding, like, regulators. Like, you need to be an expert. You need to know more than anyone else in that field. If you don't know this, there's no point of actually coming up with a solution because you don't really understand it. So, for example, for international money transfers, so why is it a problem? It's a problem because it's expensive for people and it takes a very long time. Why is it so hard to solve? Because basically banks have a lot of power. Like, they operated like for literally like 200, 250 years. They didn't want to change anything there because it's a really good revenue stream of them. I think I read reports that 30–40% of their revenue of big banks is just because of markup on exchange fees and hidden banking fees. And but that's just one side of the business, right? So how does actually an international money transfer work? So the issue with money transfers is that you have two banks, let's say Bank A and Bank B. And if you transfer money, what happens is, like, they send kind of like a request. Like, it's similar to a database request or like a WhatsApp message. They basically say, transfer that amount from Bank A to Bank B. But then what needs to happen is that you also shift funds. Because otherwise, like, Bank B, the receiver, has basically like a deficit. So if I'm the customer of Bank B and go to the ATM, I could withdraw that money without the bank actually having that money. So it creates a lot of risk. And that's the reason why it's slow, because the bank basically waits until they receive the money. So in Europe, for example, or in local markets, there's something called a central bank. And the central bank basically guarantees that both banks are trustworthy and that the receiving bank will get the funds. In an international market, this doesn't exist. So there's no World Bank. There's no central World Bank that basically controls and gives each party the trust that actually the funds will arrive. And because this happens, is that it goes between, if you do an international money transfer between Europe and the US, for example, there's actually up to 5 banks involved, and you don't really know, like, how the money shifts around the world. So it could be that instead of going in a route which would be logical closer to the US, it could go like to Mexico, from Mexico to Bangkok, from Bangkok to South Africa, from South Africa to actually the US, which is completely stupid in our opinion. And then why hasn't anyone solved the problem? Because it's quite hard. You need to fully understand the market. You need to fully understand where the weakness in the current system is. And in that sense, the weakness in the system was that you could go through local clearing. So what we and a couple of other companies now started is that we create local entities in these markets, and we basically do the transfer within Revolut, and then we go through the local clearing. So instead of sending money through the overall payment network, we basically say, you shift money from, let's say, the European entity of Revolut to the American one. We can basically trust each other because it belongs to the same company. And then we go for the local central banks. And that allows us to send money in one business day from Europe to the US without any fees. So the next stage is actually then coming up with the solution. But as I said, you should invest most of your time actually thinking about the problem, understanding the market. So if you understand everything, you should come up with a solution that's at least 100 times better. Why? Because usually customers overvalue what they have by 10x, and a company overvalues what they offer by 10x. So nobody really wants to switch something that is like, 5% better. It's too much effort, too much hassle. It just doesn't make sense. So something we always think about or ask ourselves is, can we actually build a solution that's 100 times better than what exists on the market? If we can't, we just don't do it. And one of the most important things I learned at Revolut is that you can look at one of your competitor, let's say TransferWise, you copy their product, maybe make it even better, and then completely undercut the market and let them bleed out. Fourth thing is virality. So startups, the definition of startups is like a high-growth company, right? High growth could be many things, could be revenue, could be user acquisition. But the essence is always like you should think about growth when you build your solution. We launched like a crypto exchange service a while ago. And we could have just put it into the app, and then our existing user base would have used it, and maybe some people would have heard it about PR and so on. But in the end, like, our growth targets are quite aggressive. And we were thinking about how can we leverage the fact that everybody wanted to invest in crypto. How can we push people to help us grow faster? So what we came up with is something like a feature unlock. So essentially, you needed to invite 3 people or upgrade to premium to get access to our platform. And that went so good that we basically tripled our growth overnight. Other common systems are waiting lists, referral systems, or partnerships. So in the end, if you want to reach hypergrowth, you need to either leverage the network of your existing user base, or you need to leverage the network of a partner. Uber is a good example of actually partnerships. You probably all saw these free Uber ride vouchers, like these promo codes that they spread everywhere on the web. They spread it on apps, on, I don't know, takeaway vouchers, whatsoever. But the goal is basically to completely oversaturate a market with their vouchers so that people try it out and get their first ride, and then get them sticky through the product. The fifth thing is something I actually think is one of the most important things. So probably some of you still know MySpace. So what was the reason that MySpace lost against Facebook? I mean, they had I think 300 million users. Facebook had 10, 20. MySpace had massive funding. They made 700 million revenue. And Facebook was this small player with a couple of geeks in a garage, or a house, actually. The main difference was that the engagement of Facebook was way, way higher. So people spent on average, a day, 600 minutes on Facebook, compared to around, I think, 20 on MySpace. And that was the key, because in the end, you can compare it to a glass of coffee. If there's a lot of holes in a glass of coffee, it doesn't make sense to add more coffee on top, because there's no way you can actually drink the coffee. So first, you need to fix your rates, fix activation rates, fix engagement rates. And in order to do this, you should think about these 3 things. First thing is feature adoption. How can you make people aware of your feature or product? Usually, you should think about time-based triggers or activity-based triggers. So the goal is not to spam a user. The goal is actually to make them excited about a certain feature. A good example, for example, is we launched a new feature called Vaults. Vaults is basically the easiest way for you to save money. It works like a piggy bank. So all your spare change is automatically put aside in a vault where you don't use the money. So how is this feature related to cryptocurrencies? Well, you can save this money in Bitcoins, Litecoins, Ethereum, and so on. And then what we did was, if you did your second crypto exchange, we sent you a notification about, hey, did you know that you can create a vault and automatically save your spare change in crypto? And these kind of messages, they're not really spammy. They actually increase the user experience on your platform, but they're quite effective. The second thing is if you actually start using the product, you need to think about like how can you keep people engaged. So people try out a lot of things, but most things are not very sticky. To give you a good example, it's Instagram. So basically you upload a picture, and then they could just do nothing, right? Because the product itself, there's nothing you can really do unless the user opens the app again. But you could actually, what Instagram does is they send you notifications whenever a friend likes your picture, whenever a friend comments on your picture, because it gives you that gratification of that you're very important, that you have a lot of friends, that people value you. And because you get that feedback, you actually upload the next picture and another picture and another picture. It kind of gets you addictive. So if you think about like how to engage people, you should think about like what makes people stick, like what do people want. Let's say you save money. The feedback you want to get is that actually the savings is increasing, right? But you could literally do this with any product. The third thing is something like a lot of companies do wrong is re-engagement. There's always like certain reasons why people stop using a feature or product. I mean, it could be that you just have a bad time, you're on vacation, and so on. But a critical thing is you shouldn't like annoy people. So let's say people stop using Instagram. They could just send you every 4 hours like a message like, hey, go back to Instagram, it's super cool. You probably would delete the app within 2 days. So instead of doing this, what they do is they basically, whenever a friend joins Instagram, or whenever a friend started using Instagram that you were connected on Facebook, they occasionally send you messages. There's usually like a timeline between these messages, so they don't get too spammy or too little spammy. And the way you usually do this is you track like what is the best time span to send these messages. So in case of Instagram, I think it's like 2 to 3 days. And the last thing is like, it doesn't really matter if you solve the biggest need, have the best product, the best engagement strategy, if you don't make people aware of it. So every launch we do at Revolut is like a big bang. So we have an in-house PR team that is currently 8 people. We get around, I think, over 1,000 press mentions each month. We just released yesterday Bitcoin and Ripple support and had 300 press articles mentioning us. And that's not enough. We updated the website, we updated our blog, we created social media posts, we create campaigns that make people try it out and push people towards usage. We send our whole user base an email newsletter, we put in-app news banners, and we send push notifications. And everything basically at the same time to get maximum exposure. And here's like a little sneak peek of what's coming in 2 weeks. So we're launching the first metal card, real metal card in Europe. It's contactless, and it has a lot of cool features. If you want to see how it feels, looks like, I'm around afterwards, and I can give you mine.
Yes, it said questions, and there are already a few over Slido, so you can either ask questions going to slido.com, join with Pioneers'18, and then select an academy, or you can raise your hand, I will come with a mic. OK, I will take a few questions from Slido, and then come to you. So, you said you didn't invest in marketing, Valentin, but you give money if someone invites a friend. Isn't this marketing as well?
We don't pay anyone to invite a friend.
All right. So you revolutionized traditional finance. The question is if the new financial system is based on the traditional or a new one. Are you afraid of the blockchain?
I wouldn't say afraid. Like we're active supportive to crypto community. We were the first challenger bank that introduced cryptocurrencies, and we are still one of the only ones, or actually the only one that does it. It was quite hard for us to push it through with our partners, but we managed it, and we think actually that cryptocurrencies and the blockchain will completely disrupt the whole financial industry. I think it's currently a bit too early to use it production-wide, but it will come in over the next few years.
All right, I am sorry, I have to take the question as for upvotes. Why does your card design look identical to N26?
I guess that's the metal card, right? I mean, I don't want to bash them, but the thing is, like, they use a metal core card, so it's basically a plastic card with a bit of metal in between. They have a sticker on the outside. We don't think that's a good quality, right? I mean, we don't want to charge our users £12 or 12 euros a month, and then you get a piece of plastic. We think that similar to an iPhone and what existed before, there needs to be a change with all the cards. And we want to offer you a quality product. So we invested a lot of time, a lot of thinking, like how could we offer you a contactless metal card that works, that is tested in multiple markets. And so I don't think we actually offer the same as they do.
All right, so before taking the question that was over there, there's an interesting one which had 4 upvotes. How do you learn more about your market than people with 10 years of experience?
It's simple, you use Google. I mean, I'll give you an example. So our VP of Operations, Alan, he basically started 2.5 years ago at Revolut as an intern. Similar to Alan, nobody in our company had a payments or a banking background. Our CEO was trader. Our CTO did infrastructure in a bank, but we all didn't know about exchange, international money transfers. We didn't really understand how it works. So what people did is basically they read documentation, they read regulations, they Googled everything they could find about finance, just to make sure that we're offering a product that actually disrupts the market. So it's the same whenever I launch a product. It's basically we try to dig deep to the root cause. It's similar to like Elon Musk. Like there's no point of actually thinking about a solution if you don't dig deep. And there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of books, a lot of experts that you can talk to, that you get experience to. It's just like that's actually the hard work, right? Because nobody will provide you with that information like on an easy way. So I think you should just start Googling, you should talk to people in the industry, just get a sense of feeling of how the market works, what kind of weaknesses there are, and in the end it's just like a lot of work. So in the end, like if you, let's say, want to build the next Stripe, you probably need to invest 2 to 3 months just reading and learning to understand the market. And if you don't do this, you won't have the experience like someone that did it for 10 years.
So we have a question over here.
Hello there, my name is Victoria Colpage, Head of Business Development. I have a very fast question dedicated to the management itself. So how do you deal with that fast growing from the managerial type? Any kind of, I don't know, secret, hidden perspective goals, maybe, I don't know, lean startup or chaotic, like how do you do this?
So basically I joined like basically a year ago. I was one of like pretty much the 100th employee. Currently we are 400. At the end of the year we want to be 800 employees. So the way we do these things is we keep everything very flat. So we usually report, like as a team lead, you usually report directly to the CEO. You get KPIs for half a year, and then you can operate with a lot of freedom to reach your KPIs. There's still like weekly catch-ups with the CEO and other people to keep everyone in the loop and to make sure that we move in the right direction. But in the end, you get a lot of freedom in our company. The other thing is we try to keep teams as small and lean as possible. So whenever a team gets too big, we break them apart again and create a new team. So let's say you do marketing, and then you basically start with 3, 4 people. Over a short period of time, the team grows and grows, and then suddenly it's 20, 30 people. So the issue is, like, as a team lead, you can't manage 20, 30 people, really. It just doesn't work. I mean, you basically just end up spending time in meetings and like talking and listening to people, but you actually don't really do work. And so what we thought is, like, for example, in marketing, you can split it up in smaller teams again. So there's a team that is basically digital marketing that focuses on SEO and stuff like this. There's a team that does PR, a team that does engagement, a team that does this. So I would really think about, like, do you all need these processes? Do you need these fancy titles? Or do you actually want to get work done?
All right, well, team, we're out of time, but question which might have a quick answer, I hope. Who are your competitors? Are they challenger banks or startups?
Our main competitors are tech companies like Amazon, WeChat, and Alipay.
All right, good. So there are plenty more questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Can people approach you somewhere if they want to talk with you or have any further questions? Yeah. Because we can't take them. Sorry.
I'm sorry. So basically, at the entrance, I will be there in like 2 minutes. And also, if you don't have a Revolut card yet, or if you need one for your friends or family, we have around 600, 700 cards that are free today. Usually cost 6 euros, so grab them as quickly as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Give it up for Valentin. Thank you.